Hi, everybody. In this video, we're going to walk through exercise 2. Now, to start, the first two questions kind of our opportunity to practice what we covered last week one more time. We're going to find two more articles in the Web of Science, but then we're going to shift gears and look at a different database to examine some ways of evaluating the impact of the journals that are publishing different studies that we're finding, because there's journals that are great and there's journals that are good, and there's journals that are really questionable. Okay, so let's get started with question number one, finding a specific article, and you'll see I've already opened up my browser to Fogler Library, and I'm in the databases section, and we want to find Web of Science to do question number one. So I go to W. Let's scroll down to Web of Science. There we are. So here we are in Web of Science. Now, remember, we want to turn off the new search using AI. We want to kind of use the queries where we're kind of building it one step at a time, just as a way to learn kind of the reasoning and process of how to construct good queries if you're doing these sorts of searches. To start with, let's look at our question that a a colleague suggests I read an article by Schwartz, published sometime between 2016 and 2018, that looked at identity development in immigrant children. They don't remember the name of the journal other than it had European in the title. And you'll notice I've highlighted some specific words in red that we can use in our search. So let's get started. And we know author. Let's kind of we'll start with the author, and it's already kind of the default for us there. And we'll type in the name Schwartz. Okay. Now I'm going to add a row. And for that, we know it was published between 2016 and 2018. So I go to year published and add 2016 to 2018. And we add that. We know it's on identity. It looked at identity development. So I'm going to add that. And that could be really anywhere. So we'll look in all fields and I'll do identity development. Okay, now notice I've two things I've put in quotes: identity development, because I don't want to get articles that say identity in the title and development in an abstract or something. No, we want articles about identity development. But at the same time, this could be a little tricky, because maybe, notice they're not saying that Schwartz used that term. Maybe Schwartz talked about identity formation. Now we won't find it because of that. So you have to kind of think sometimes about some of the jargon. If you don't find the article you're looking for, maybe try a different variation, a different synonym for identity development, or see what happens if you don't include it at all. Kind of how many do you get, and can you filter in some other way, or maybe just try identity instead of identity development. But we'll put it in this way. But I just want to point that out, that because if they said identity formation, we're not going to find it now. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. And then the title, we know the title of the journal is European. And so we could come here and look up, we know it has European in the title somewhere for the journal. And publication title is the title of the journal. So it'd be tempting to say I'm going to do publication title and enter European and have it find all the journals that have European in the title. But that's not the way this works. It's a problem going with publication titles, that really the publication title only really works as a search if you know the title, if you know the name of the title. It really operates off of these drop-down lists. And so if you don't know the exact name of the title, it's not going to work. So instead, though, we know that European is in the title somewhere. So a way around that is, let's go with all fields and I'll enter the word European because one of those fields is the title. And so now we'll find journals. We will get journals that have European in the title, but we'll get other articles by a Schwartz in this time period about identity development that maybe have European in the title of the article, not the name of the journal. So it may do a little overkill, but it's a way of filtering out. But I just want to point out that using the publication name only really works if you know the name. So let's search and see what we get here. And we got two articles that met that criteria. Now, again, you always want to check and make sure that it's what you're actually looking for. Don't just assume it's correct. So we see two. One is titled Identity Development in Immigrant Youth, a multi-level contextual perspective. So it is talking about identity development. It's got Schwartz as an author. Oh, look, it's in the European Psychologist is the journal. So that's European in the title of the journal, and it's published in the right range. And notice it says identity development right there in the title. And also what's kind of good about this, notice that our question, it looked at identity development in immigrant children. And notice the title is telling us, oh, this is about immigrant youth. So that's another little clue that, oh, yeah, this is the article we're thinking of. The other one is Identity Behind the Iron Curtain, Recent Advances in Identity Research in Changing Contexts. And that's in the European Journal of Development Psychology with Schwartz again. So that's kind of sounds close, but nope, I think it's this looks like the one that we're looking for because it specifically is talking about immigrant youth. Now, for our exercise, if you were doing this without watching the video, I'd be fine with either of those because I just want you to play around. But let's we will go with this one as our answer, and I click on it. It takes us to the page for that article. We can read the abstract. Yeah, lots of times they're talking about identity development, and then we can export it. Select the HTML option and paste that in, and we've got our answer for question one. Great. Okay, so now let's move on to question two. So I'm going to go back, and let's clean up all of this. We'll get rid of Schwartz. And our question two is we attended a talk where someone cited a paper by Yoshinaga that was published in the journal Pediatrics. Now, that is the name of the journal, big journal, Pediatrics. Sometime after 2015, that examined the impact of early detection and intervention on language development in children with hearing loss. Okay, so we want to find that. So let's start with our author is Yoshinaga. Okay, and we know we're going to add a row. Now this time we do know. Let's go to publication title. We do know it's in pediatrics. And notice how it's doing the drop down as I'm typing this in because you've got to pick one of these drop down lists. So we'll do pediatrics there. Great. And it'll limit us to that. And we know it's sometime after 2015. So I'm going to add a row and year published is after, well, I'm just going to play it safe and do 2015 to 2025. We could do 2016. And for a moment, let's not do language development. Let's see what we get. Oh, we're down to 4. So Yoshinaga published 4 in pediatrics during that time period. And it could be potentially any of those, and we could go through and try to see which one seems to fit this description. But let's go back and we'll just add. Let's see what happens if we put in any field, kind of the same thing, and it's the same issue. You want to be careful. Language development. So we'll say, let's limit those 4 to any that specifically talk about language development. But again, maybe Yoshinaga said language acquisition or language growth, in which case this wouldn't work. So kind of, again, keep that in mind. But let's see if that works. And we'll search. And now we've just got one. Does this one seem to make sense for us? Early hearing detection and vocabulary of children with hearing loss. Early hearing detection. Well, look, that's another part of our description. They examined the impact of early detection on language development. And it hasn't picked language development here, but if I click on this, we get the whole article. And let's see, yeah, there's Yoshinaga. And Yoshinaga Tano is her actual full name. Pediatrics is the journal. So that's what we like. Good. It's in 2017, so it fits our time frame. Notice the abstract doesn't have language development in it, but the keywords does language development. So that's where it's picking that up. So, and again, that looks like it's the right one because it's also talking about early detection. Um, so, okay, so we do the same thing, export it, save it, paste it in as our answer to question number 2, and we're good to go. Now, for the rest of exercise number 2, we're going to be switching gears and using a different database called Journal Citation Reports. Okay, so notice I've already jumped us back to the Fogler Library databases. Let's come up to J for Journal Citation Reports. I'm going to scroll down. Here it is. I'm going to select that. And it takes us here. Now, Web of Science helped us to find individual research journal articles, the individual papers. And we've used the analogy that you can think of a journal article as a player on a team, and the journal that they're published in is kind of the team itself. So the papers are the baseball players. In the journal is the Boston Red Sox. You can think of it that way. That's kind of the collection of all of them. It's the team of all those papers. And the just like professional sports, a journal may be high impact. It can be great, top of its league, or it may be not so great near the bottom. And a way that we um, kind of assess that we kind of examine that, is by looking at its impact. Okay, so let's take a look at one journal in particular and see how this works. I'm going to enter a journal that we're going to be using for this assignment, the American Journal of Education. And notice it's already searching for it. There it is. And it found one result. So I'm going to click on that. It's taking us to their page in Journal Citation Reports. And here we know that we see the name of the journal. It says JCR year, that's just Journal Citation Reports. And the year that this data is based on it's based on data from 2024. Okay, that we're going to be looking at. Gives you a little information about the journal, kind of the category. It groups all the journals into different sort of discipline categories. This is in the area of education and educational research. Tells you where it's published. It's been in JCR um, the since 1997. It's electronically in JCR since 1997. Published 4 times a year. Then it gives us its performance. And the key way that we look at or the most common way that we look at at journals, the journal impact, is using this metric called a journal impact factor. Now, when a journal publishes a bunch of papers, hopefully what happens is that other researchers read those papers and they're like, wow, this is great stuff. This is really important. I need to talk about this in my next publication. And maybe I'll build some research based on that idea or expand on it. And so they're all talking about it. And so they're citing those articles when in their future studies, their future papers will be citing all the articles that came out of the journal. And when that happens, that's seen as having high impact. You know, a journal publishes things, people are reading it, they're talking about it, and in their publications, they're now referencing it. They're citing all of those studies that went on in your journal. That's high impact. Um, Versus there have been cases where journals publish papers and nobody ever cites them. Maybe no one even reads them. Who knows? It never shows up in the future research. It's like a dead end. That's seen as low impact because it doesn't seem to be having any measurable effect on the field. Now, the high impact journals, because they're high impact and everybody's buzzing about them, tend to get the best stuff. You send your best work, your strongest studies, your most innovative, great work to high impact journals. Um, and so a way of measuring kind of that quality, that impact of a journal is what's called a journal impact factor. Technically, how the journal impact factor works is for 2024 is the computers for the JCR computers look for, if we're doing the impact factor for the American Journal of Education for 2024, it looks at 2023, the two preceding years, 2023 and 2022, and it finds all the articles that were published by the American Journal of Education in 2022 and 2023, and it makes a list. And then it looks for 2024, it looks at all the journals that they keep track of, and finds how many times are those American Journal of Education studies that were published in 2022, 2023, how many times are they cited in in journals in 2024? And it counts the average number of times that they're cited. You can actually see here, it gives, so here's the journal impact factor for 2024 is 2.3. It actually gives you the calculation, which is kind of cool if you're into this stuff. It says, for example, here's the number of citable items in 2022 is 20, and 2023 is 2021. So there's 41. So there's 41 articles that were published in 2022 and 2023. And in 2024, those were cited, number of citations in 2024. Well, the 20 from 2022 were cited 55 times, and those 21 from 2023 were cited 41 times. So it's a total of 96. So those 41 articles published in 2022 and 2023, the 41 articles were cited a total of 96 times in 2024, which gives you an impact factor of 2.3. That's where it comes from. You notice it uses the language citable items. That's because sometimes a journal will publish a paper that no one would ever cite. So you don't want to count that. You don't want to kind of mess up the numbers, make it a little murky by including things. For example, they may publish a paper that just thanks everybody that reviewed for them. They may have a paper that simply describes changes in their editorial process. Well, no one's ever going to cite these papers, so you don't count those. So it kind of filters out the things that would never ever be cited. Um, Now, there's another here. So that's the journal impact factor for 2024. They also have a journal impact factor without self-citations. And what this gets at is that, let's say a journal is publishing, let's say they publish a bunch of papers, and the next year that those papers get lots of citations, lots of people are citing them, but all of those citations are from the same journal, are from that journal. That's not really having much of an impact if a journal, they may have lots and lots of citations, but if all of those citations are the journal citing articles from that same journal, it's really not having much of an impact. And there have been cases where that's happened, that a lot of the citations from a journal are coming from the same journal. So it's not influencing things, because if you don't read those journals, it's not having any impact if you don't read that specific journal. So what the uh, impact factor without self-citations does, it takes out all the citations for the journal that for that journal. So this would subtract all the citations that are in 2024 that are in the American Journal of Education for articles from the American Journal of Education. In fact, you can kind of look at it and see where they subtracted 4 of those 96 that were published. 4 of them were actually in the American Journal of Education again. So it subtracts those and gets to 2.2, just a little bit smaller. So not much of an issue here, but again, self-citations can create a problem where you inflate the citation and make a journal look like it has a bigger impact than it really does. So you want to kind of keep track of that. And if there's a big difference, that's a problem. So we got our answer for question 3 now. Based on the 2024 Journal Impact Factor for the American Journal of Education, what's the average number of times that articles published in 2022 and 2023 were cited in 2024? I'm just describing how that impact factor is calculated because people sometimes often don't know. They just know what the 2.3 is, and it's 2.3. So on average, articles published in those 2 years were cited 2.3 times in 2024, which for education is that's a decent number. That's a good impact factor for this journal. They're doing well in the discipline of education. And if I look down here, 2.3, there it is. It's B. Our answer is B, 2.3. Also, notice I did say specifically I'm excluding the self-citation, so we don't want that value. So it's the 2.3 is our answer for question 3. And oops, we've also actually answered the question 4 while we're at it, that when calculating a journal impact factor, including self-citations may inflate the appearance of how widely the journal is being cited because it's just cases of a journal citing it's the same journal. So that's definitely true. That can be a problem. So that's our answer for question number 4 is true. Okay. Now let's scroll down a little bit more. You can see kind of here it shows how the impact factor has changed, kind of over time. Lots of interesting information here. You can see. And I'm going to talk here about the journal citation indicator for a bit. And that also gets us to question number 2. I'm sorry, question number 5. The Now, one of the issues with the journal impact factor is that um, it can vary a lot discipline by discipline. Some disciplines uh, in some fields, you are expected whenever you're publishing papers, there is the expectation that you will include at the start of the paper a very detailed, comprehensive review of the literature in that area. So you may have dozens or even like 100 citations every time you publish a paper in that discipline because they expect to see it. They want to kind of see that you've looked at the whole, you really understand that all of that content. So they may publish in that sense. And if papers in that discipline are citing many, many other papers every time a paper gets published, papers in that discipline are going to get lots of citations. They'll just have to, and the journal impact factor for that discipline will be larger because of it. Other disciplines are the opposite. They want very short, very concise, very tight introductions, and you just they want to see you very narrowly focus on exactly the question that you're looking at in that study, and that's it. Very focused. And you'll have very few citations in papers in that discipline. And because papers are being published with few citations every time, the number of citations will be smaller and the impact factors for that discipline will be small. So impact factors can vary a lot discipline to discipline. So a way that the journal citation reports and the company behind them are getting around that is they've started a new sort of measure of impact called the journal citation indicator. And what it does is it normalizes the publications, how many publications, how many citations there are, I should say, not. It normalizes the number of citations for every discipline, for different disciplines. It also is a little different from the journal impact factor. Remember, that was based on 2 years. The journal citation indicator is based on 3 years. So it's a little different that way as well. But how it works is by normalizing it, is if a journal has the average number of citations over that 3-year period for other journals in its discipline, it has a journal citation indicator of 1. So 1 means I'm right there with the average. I'm kind of consistent. I'm at the average number of citations with my peers in my discipline. A citation indicator of 1.5 means they have 50% more citations than the average journal for their discipline. Uh, 2, citation indicator of 2 would mean they get twice as many or 100% more citations, right? Twice as many as 100% more citations than the average journal in their discipline. And a 0.5 would say that you've got half as many, 50% of the number of citations for your discipline over that 3-year period. Okay. So I think you'll see this used more and more because it, again, adjusts for different discipline patterns that we'll see. But this gives us, so it's good to know what this is and kind of how to interpret it in terms of, is this journal having a big impact or not? So this gives us our answer to question number 5, which is, which of the following statement provides the correct value and interpretation for the 2024 Journal Citation Indicator value of the American Journal of Education? And we see it's 1.12. Oh, but both A and B are both 1.12s. So notice the difference though in how they describe it. A, 1.12, indicating 12% of the average number of citations. Well, 12% of the average number. So if the average is like this big, 12% is a small, no, that's not it. It's 12% is only a tiny fraction of the number of average citations. So no, it's not that. B is indicating 12% more citations than average. That's the one. Just like remember, 1.5 is 50% more. 1.12 is 12% more citations than the average. So our correct answer is B. Now let's keep scrolling down and you can see, oh, here's the citation distribution. This can be a little interesting because what if a journal on average is getting 3 or 4 citations per paper on average, but it's actually just one paper's getting a whole lot of citations and carrying the whole team, and the others are getting none. This kind of gives you a sense of what the actual spread is for that. So you can see if that's going on with a journal. Here's some other information about open access, which can be useful. But let's stop here at the ranks. So we've got the kind of the impact factors that are saying how often are papers being cited from that journal, going forward as a measure of its impact. But another way is to look at how does that journal compare to other journals in its discipline. So you can rank the journals kind of within their discipline, within their field, based on either the journal impact factor or based on the journal citation indicator. And let's focus on the journal impact factor because that's what question 6 is going to use. And we see again, it reminds us that the discipline, that category for our journal is education and educational research. And for 2024, we see its ranking was 155 out of 756. So JCR has classified 756 journals as education and educational research, and this is ranked as number 155 in that discipline. Okay, so that's good. That's actually a pretty good rank. If we look here a little bit more, we see that the it, gives us that information, but also says it's in the Q1, which is telling us it's the first quartile, the top 25%. So it's a good journal in that sense. And in fact, it's at the 79.6th percentile for journals in education and educational research. Very solid journal. That's great. Now, If you scroll down, you can see kind of how the ranking and the percentile has changed over time. Here's 2023. But if you go down to 2022 and you look closely, you'll notice things change. That here, it was only, notice it was 756 journals in 2024. It was 760 in 2023. The numbers will change a little bit, the number of journals, as journals are added and journals die sometimes. But you go to 2022 and it was only 269 journals. Did we like add 500 journals? Yeah, in 1 year, did we add 500 journals in a year? No, no, no. That'd be crazy. What happened is before 2023 for the journal impact factor, they were really only focused on top journals. They didn't include, there was hundreds of journals in educational research that JCR didn't try to track. And so the rankings then are based on journals that are already pretty good to be in JCR at all. At that point was an indication you're a decent journal just to get in it, period. So of course the ranking's a little lower because it's kind of you're compared to only the elite journals, but that is a little deceptive. It implies the journal may, oh, it's only average, but in fact, compared to all the journals out there, it's much better. So this was a good change to start to track as many journals as possible instead of just some of the top journals. But you'll notice that's why things kind of change, and it's just a change in how they were collecting the data as part of that. Okay, but this we're now based on this, we're ready to answer question number 6, right? Which is, oops, right there again. The what's the 2024 rank for the American Journal of Education based on the journal impact factor among journals in education and educational research? We see that's 155 out of 756, which is A. So there's our answer for question number 6. Okay, now before wrapping up, let's look at a couple other things. One, as I noted, you can also rank by the journal citation indicator. Now, notice these are going to be a little different because remember, this is the journal citation indicators based on 3 years instead of the 2 years. And then there's this notion of a cited half-life, and we'll take a kind of a quick look at this for a moment. Um, the idea here is that if you look at all of, remember, they were looking at all the journals everywhere that were published in 2024 and seeing kind of the, uh, if you look at all those journals published in 2024, and for all of them, you identify how many times are they citing a paper in 2024, any paper from the American Journal of Education, you find out that it was 1,428 times. So in 2024, all the journals for anywhere cited 1,428 journals, articles from, or 1,428 times they cited an article that was published at some point in the American Journal of Education. That's looking at the whole, as far back as they go, 1,428 papers at some point. Um, the and here it kind of gives you a breakdown, kind of what do they mean by that. So, for example, among the papers published in 2024, all those papers in all the research journals published in 2024, they found 106 times that a article published in 2017 in the American Journal of Education was cited. So 106 times someone cited a 2017 American Journal of Education paper. And if we look here, 69 times they cited a publication from the American Journal of Education that was published in 2020. So this gives us the that the journal impact factor is based on just these little green bars, but this gives us a sense going further back that you can see that, wow, even papers 7, 8, 10 years ago are still being cited by people in 2024. In fact, the half-life here tells you that if you look at those 1,428 papers, that the 1,428 times an American Journal of Education paper was cited, 11.8 of those citations, I'm sorry, half of half of those citations were 11.8 years old, and half of them were more recent than 11.8. It gives you a sense that papers are they're 10 years old and they're still getting cited by other researchers out there. There's some staying power, some longevity of this journal, the stuff that they're publishing is still getting attention many years later. So that's a good indicator too, kind of giving you a sense of the broad impact that the journal has and continues to have over time. Now, hope this helps kind of clarify things. Let me know if you have any questions and take care. Bye bye.